and you get one of the most listened to Saturday morning streaming media political talk shows going today. And it's all right here on our flagship station, Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. So join me, the Fed, for Inside the Eye Live every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern. It is truly intelligent media for the politically aware.
Welcome to Sacred Matrix, a divine paradigm of love and universal consciousness, with your host, Janet Kira Lessin and Dr. Sasha Lessin.
Together, we transform the world.
And now, here are your hosts, Janet Kira and Dr. Sasha Lessin.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Sacred Matrix on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. I'm your host, Janet Kira Lessin, with my co-host, Dr. Sasha Lessin, and we have a very special guest today, Alfred Lambremont Webre. And Alfred has a new book, which is called My Journey Landing Heaven on Earth, and it's how to accelerate our positive future along a positive holographic timeline, and we're going to be discussing that and more. Before we bring Alfred on and bring in Dr. Lessin, I want to say a little bit more about the author. Alfred Lambremont Webre's contribution to the development of a positive future for Earth and our living community in dimensional ecology, have included the development of exopolitics in his book, Exopolitics, Politics, Government, and Law in the Universe. The mapping of the Omniverse we published as the Omniverse in December 2015 by Bayer Company, and the discovery of the positive timeline equation, now published in Alfred's book, My Journey Landing Heaven on Earth, which was just published a couple weeks ago. Alfred is a graduate of Georgetown Preparatory School in Classics, Yale University in Industrial Administration Honors, and Yale Law School in International Law, and was a Fulbright Scholar in International Economic Integration in Uruguay. He has taught economics at Yale University and the Bill of Rights at the University of Texas. Alfred was a general counsel to the New York City Environmental Protection Administration, a futurist at Stanford Research Institute, where he directed the 1977 Carter White House Extraterrestrial Communications Study, and he was an NGO delegate to the United Nations and the Unispace Conference. He was a judge in the Kuala War Crimes Tribunal, and he's been active in broadcasting in the United States and Canada. And he's been working on the Public Interest Counterintelligence, the Assassination Information Bureau. Boy, I want to know what that is. Deconstruction of the Transhumanist Agenda, the peaceful uses of outer space for the Institute for Cooperation in Space, Life on Mars, the Mars Anomaly Research Society, multi-dimensional online education, Omniverse, which is in development, and his websites, newsinsideout.com and exopolitics.com. So, Sasha, what would you like to say before you bring on Alfred?
Oh, we're really fortunate to have you here, Alfred. Alfred's one of the great cultural creatives. I call him a meme maker. He's a maker of memes. He crystallizes things out of the collective unconscious and lets us all focus on them and realize that we have potentially positive futures. And he doesn't just talk about it. Alfred's a doer. He brought the criminals to trial and got convictions against some of the biggest monsters of our day. And if we get rid of the monsters and we have a decent government, Alfred will be one of the guys that helps it happen. Go for it.
Welcome, Alfred. Thank you for coming on our show today.
Yeah, thank you. I'm very, very happy to be here. Good.
I'm so happy to have you. I'd like to pass the baton to you and let you tell us about your new book, and then we'll go into some Q&A.
Right. Well, it's actually a book that shouldn't be here. It's a book that I hadn't planned on publishing till 2020 till 2025, and the reason why it's actually published is that I saw Jade Helm being started, this operation of the U.S. government, and it seemed that actually was sort of the beginning of a series of massive operations that would have left the planet now in 2010, I think, down a very negative path. And so I quickly decided that the draft that I had of this book now, I should publish it and spend the next 10 years really talking about it, which is how to create a positive future. And that I shouldn't wait until 2025 to publish it, which is when I thought that Christ consciousness, or unity consciousness, would have landed on the planet and the book would have been understood. And so that's why I published it now, is really to put this material out there now, and to begin to talk about it now, and to in that process begin to interweave all of these ideas over whatever I'm doing over the next 10 years. And hopefully it'll do some good. And so that's why this book is here. And it's a really strange feeling to be out there talking about something that you didn't think you'd be talking about for 10 years. Let me tell you.
Well, it's like you saw the meme was coming down, and you decided to put your archetype or meme out fast enough so that we can focus on it and we can think it into matter.
Yeah. To kind of change the conversation from what I thought was going to be like this terminal direction toward planetary destruction, or toward a very destructive direction for the planet, and then just to give some weight toward a direction toward a positive future, and to really put these ideas out there, and to get all that started. Then I said, what the heck, I'm just going to put it out there right now. And so that's what I did. And
I think that's the way to do it. You have probably shifted timelines for everyone into a more positive matrix.
Well, I really hope so. I know that I feel a little disoriented having done so myself. So I hope that everybody else is affected positively for the future.
So what's a précis? What is the overall thing that your book is bringing out?
Well, I think that's a good question, because I think that I think that the précis is that look, you're living on a it's like, oh, you think the end times are here? I'm sorry, but you're living on a positive planet and you're going to have to deal with it. It's so funny. It's because it's like I started looking at all of the articles today, or many of the articles that came through, and it was like, oh, we're here writing the end of America. It's like the end of America's here. America's going down the drain. America's going into the toilet. All these things about America imploding, and everything is going down a negative timeline, and then this book kind of goes into an opposite direction, and it's like everything is wrong. So
Right.
So it's like for people who want to go in an opposite direction from everything is going wrong. So it's a very strange book.
Well, I think it's exactly what we need at this time. I was just talking to someone yesterday. They were talking about A.R. Gordon's work with the LEARN, Light Encoded Reality Matrix, which is a way of doing manifesting thoughts into deeds. And so when people are focused on Armageddon, the apocalypse, the end of America, there's a part of them that wants it, but there's another part that doesn't, for the most part, if you're American, right? So this is an invitation, the macrocosm reflects the microcosm and vice versa, to look at the part of you that wants to experience like an ego death, and which is you're identifying as, this world or this country. And there's really some underlying need that is much different than this, and that's what we're talking about, shifting, just like changing channels or going onto a new lane in the highway, shifting to this positive timeline.
Now, that's an interesting way of looking at it from the point of view of ego death. I hadn't thought about looking at it that way. But
well, I have so many friends that are saying Planet X Nibiru is here, it's coming, it's going to happen in July, it's going to happen in August, we're all going to die, the earth changes. And I'm going, well, look at yourself. You really want this to happen, don't you? You're all excited about it. And I don't want that outcome for me or my animals or my planet. Can we, change that channel? It's kind of, you're creating it on some level. That's my understanding of it. Thoughts are deeds, and we're focused on it, which is the attention of the Illuminati, and in some way we're creating it by focusing on it, and so shift the channel. What do you really want to happen? Do you want to see your kids die in a flood, or your grandchildren, or do you want to, have something nice to experience?
Right. That's essentially, I think, what one walks away from reading this book, being with this book with, and it's not a book that I thought that I would be talking about now, but I made the decision to put it out there now, and to really, have it out there, and to start talking about all of these themes, and to talking about basic concepts that fly directly into the face of the concepts that are being talked about are being experienced out there, which is death, doom, destruction, falling apart, a collapse, all of those things, and to really getting people away from all of that, because it seems that all of those concepts, in my mind, are architected and are controlled, and are, and have been manufactured to arrive at this result. That is essentially what I think people walk away from this book with. And that's essentially it. And I'm sort of, I'm kind of still, I'm just going to have to see what's going to happen over the next 10 years. Maybe, it's like, well, gee, if we land paradise on Earth by 2025, I'm going to say, you see, I was right.
Well, I hope that you're right and that's right. Because as a experiencer that has taken on board a craft and shown 24 different multiverses and the potential, one being total annihilation of the Earth itself, and on the other end of the continuum, absolute utopia. I see us manifesting, co-creating one of the utopian environments, maybe one reality is one that has something left to do. It's all done, we just sit around and sing kumbaya, but something left to do. So perhaps this is a good point to go into some of the details of the book so we can get our listeners from here to there.
Yeah.
And,
So I can begin to do that now, and I'm very glad that you just said what you did, because it'll give me kind of the guidance, or I'm just trying to get to it'll give me kind of the way to start, or to begin to get to this book.
Right. Yeah. What are the chapters? What do you got to say? And, a lot of what you're saying, if you go to the level of general theory, like Preetji's theory, is that as the perturbations or disturbances grow more and more intense, one of the possibilities is that the system will reorganize itself on a higher level of functioning with more complexity and interrelation of parts. And so that when you go to the level of general theory, there's no reason why it has to be catastrophic just because there's reorganization.
Yeah. Now, so let me start here at the beginning. And you said yourself, Janet, that you said, well, gee, as a person who's been up, and I was shown, what did you say? I was shown 24 different multiplexes? Is that multiverses? Yeah. And so I wasn't going to publish this book until, as I said, 2025. And I said, well, oh, what the heck? I'll do this now. And so, after an introduction, I guess you said that this book is really written in. It includes an easy to read 10-point approach on how to accelerate our positive future on a positive holistic holographic timeline, and an introduction.
Great, 10 points.
Yeah, and an introduction to the positive timeline equation. And also, it's kind of in a screenplay format, along with an extended memoir, and it covers the work that I've done in 3 different areas, and that's creating social inventions in exopolitics, in mapping the Omniverse, and in the positive timeline equation from 1973 to 2015, which is a little over 40 years. And it covers a lot of the multi-dimensional interactions that I've had during that time, multi-dimensional interactions that are different from the ones that you've had, but they're multi-dimensional interactions nonetheless, and they start out. So I start out in scene 1 in 1973, which is the Holy Spirit, and it's set in February of 1973 at 2 a.m. in Alfred's loft in downtown Soho, Manhattan, 130 Green Street, 2nd floor, New York 10012. And there you learn that Alfred, Aelfraed, Aelfraed, is derived from the Old English elf, raid, elf council, like, elves, council. Elves were considered to be supernatural beings having special powers of seeing into the future. And so Alfred encapsulates the essence of his spirit as an elfin wise counselor. So the reason why my name is Alfred is because I'm kind of an elfin wise counselor, because I communicate with spirits. Do you follow what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So here, many people tend to see me as a judge and all this kind of stuff, and as the developer of exopolitics and mapping the Omniverse, and dealing with all of these things. And so in this book, I'm going kind of behind the scenes, and I'm showing that if we go back to 1973, all of my work started in concert with a multidimensional being, and we both initiated the work in a very special way. So it's stuff that I would have not said publicly, because then all of the ufologists in the world would have jumped down my throat. They've jumped down my throat as it is, all of the, you can just name them, right? They would have jumped down my throat. And then all of the agents and CIA operatives and, all of the guys would have jumped down my throat. And everybody on all of the work that I've done over the last 40 years would have jumped down my throat. And if I would have got up and said, I'm here on the name of, I'm on a mission from God, right? You follow me?
I follow you, yes.
Yeah, so I actually...
But they might all say, hey, I thought I was too. Maybe we all are.
Yeah. So I actually did these 40 years without saying a lot of what was going on, where I was coming from, right? So, and I wasn't going to tell where I was coming from until 2025, because maybe I just didn't want to get all the grief that I thought I was going to get. You follow what I'm saying? Because I've gotten so much grief from.
Right. You know what you're doing? You're breaking a miasma of pluralistic ignorance, because many people have had deep spiritual experiences and extraterrestrial contacts, but they've all shut up and they've been waiting for 2025, and you're leading the way, because there's many of us.
Right. And so, and here then, I started, I saw Jade Helm happening, and I said, oh my God, they're really pulling the plug on this one. And then I said, I've got to throw a Hail Mary pass, right?
Right.
And so this is what actually, I think it was Jerry, my wife, and I came up with this, and I said, this book is my Hail Mary pass, right?
Right.
Right.
Wow.
This is my Hail Mary pass for the positive timeline. So that's basically it. And if you go to scene one, it starts out, I think it's really interesting reading. First of all, it's history, right? And then it's really interesting reading. I mean, not that I'm the author, but I think it's interesting reading at 2 a.m.
Read an actual selection. Can we get you to actually read a selection?
Yeah, sure. Here we go.
Okay.
Why don't I just start reading? Why don't I just start reading from Act 1, Scene 1, and then you'll get a feeling for it, and then people will understand what I'm doing. And this book is in multiple parts, and the first part of it is a full book in 3 acts, and you know that works. See, this is not a work of fiction. It's actually here, I'll get it. It says, Journey Volume 1 is a nonfiction true life history of personal experiences occurring around the founding of Exopolitics, the science of relations among intelligent civilizations in the multiverse, the mapping of the Omniverse, and the development of the positive future equation. So this is actually it. And then when you go, and so there's this Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3 is the first part of the book, and then there's a second part of it. And so the first part of it, when you come to in Act 1, the conflict of the story is discovered. In this act, the exposition, the introduction of the protagonist and other actors that the protagonist meets takes place, as well as the dramatic premise. An inciting incident, the incident that sets the events of the story in motion, occurs approximately halfway through the first act. Now, I didn't set out to write it this way, but as it turned out, when I went out to write this story, which went from 1973 to 2015, I didn't set out to write it in 3 acts, but it wrote itself in 3 acts. You follow me?
Wow. Right.
The Act 1, Act 2, and 3. Sorry?
Did you write this 40 years ago? Did you write this now?
It's Hegelian.
Yeah. This has been written in various times.
Okay.
And there's a part of it called Recovery, which is after the 3 acts of Journey, and that was written and completed in 1999, and I have that after the 3 acts, and that's kind of a memoir in itself, and that's all in archetype. That's me living in archetype, and you can read it there. And I published it briefly online in 1999, and then I took it offline. It was published at the same time as Exopolitics. I published, I wrote Exopolitics and Recovery in 1999, and I put them both online in the year 2000. And then I took Recovery offline when I published Exopolitics as a softcover book. But now it's all coming online to complete the historical record, so that I just don't appear as a 3D technocrat from Yale. You follow what I'm saying?
Yes.
So this is like to begin to fill in all of the blanks and to complete the picture of who is Alfred Lambremont Webre. Because so far I've just kind of presented I really haven't filled in all of the blanks of who's really been involved with what I'm doing and where am I coming from. That really hasn't been part of the story, although since the year 2000, which is essentially Act 3, which is essentially what everybody's most familiar with, because in the year 2000, I link up with Bashago, I link up with Laura Eisenhower, I link up with the whole Exopolitics Disclosure Project, that whole movement. We all link up in the year 2000 because that's the year that I publish Exopolitics, okay? So that kicks in Act 3. And I kind of come out of nowhere, but I don't come out of nowhere. I come out of 40 years of working in other realms. You follow what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So here we go. Act 1, Scene 1. At 2 a.m., this is February 1973, 2 a.m. At 2 a.m., Alfred Lambremont Webre was awake, working at the front of his loft on Green Street, then just gentrifying from industrial to artist gallery. Before Alfred and his architect wife, Teresa, had converted it into an ultra-modern artist space that eventually was featured in New York Magazine, the loft had been a warehouse for religious artifacts. The renovation had tossed out literally barrel after barrel, filled with gilt-edged holy cards of Jesus, Mary, and the saints. Alfred's 17-month-old son, Freddie, was asleep in his back bedroom. Teresa had gone to Vermont to design a ski house. He and Freddie were alone in the loft. Alfred was busy painting the shelves of his office bookcase, bright yellow and red. Even now he remembers the glare of the white fluorescent lights on the tall frosted front windows of the loft. The silence was peaceful, calm, like a pillow spread out around the white space and onto the hard maple floor. Alfred remembers he was sitting for a long time as in meditation. His consciousness became single-focused. His visual field became acutely clear. After a while, Alfred felt encased in the translucent energy field. His consciousness deepened, thoughts resonating with powerful insights. Gradually, Alfred became aware of a living presence permeating the energy field around him. Then the presence became one with the energy field, responding softly, then more loudly to his thoughts. Alfred and the presence spoke back and forth, each just at the edges of his consciousness. With each reverberation of communication, Alfred's consciousness expanded out into union with his source. Alfred and the presence were dialoguing, but more than that, he was integrating with the entity in a state of profound reverence and oneness. He felt at peace, united with the deep truth of reality, a mystic state. Alfred and the present stayed in this mutuality for an indeterminate period, what felt like a timeless embrace. He felt in the presence of a being of the order of the gods, something far and beyond any reality he could conceive. Alfred felt like he was being given a revelation. The dialogue was a communion edging toward the center of his consciousness. Alfred began to hear the outlines of the thought communications that grew between the entity and himself. He became aware of the content of these thought communications. Alfred could make out that their dialogue had to do with the agenda of spirit in our reality. Though Alfred could not hear the communications yet, their meaning seemed to confirm what he had been deducing in his waking hours. Alfred's mind raced with questions about the identity of the entity. What are the interdimensional and extraterrestrial intelligences? What is their agenda? How did he fit into their agenda? How could he interpret their plans? What is their agenda? How would it evolve? The entity now came into the center of Alfred's consciousness, holding it in invisible embrace. The telepathic communications between Alfred and the entity became louder and more defined. Each syllable, each word of thought emitted telepathically by the presence reverberated down the core of his being like long musical notes played up and down the edges of his energy field. All of a sudden, Alfred's thoughts spoke first, loudly in his mind. "Who are you?" he asked the presence. A long, deep pause ensued. Alfred felt safe, but forward in asking, as though he had been given permission to approach. Profound was the thought communication that came back from the present. "I am the Holy Spirit," the present said in thought. Silence enveloped the two, Alfred and the presence. Communion embraced them. Realization overcame Alfred's being. Elevation caught him in its gentle hand, and he rose in frequency of thought and feeling. Alfred wanted to stay in the moment forever, and he stayed as long as he could remember, living in the deep embrace. He could feel his molecules changing, altered, transforming his naive human state. The Holy Spirit, Holy of Holies, third person of deity, thought Alfred's human mind in a flash of recognition. At any other higher level of energy gradient, Alfred knew he would have been rendered unconscious or at least transfixed by the presence. Alfred rested in meditation on the most recent response by the presence. Alfred let go of his evaluative, judgmental brain processes and just experience being at one with this moment. He felt enthralled. Symbols of the Holy Spirit pushed him into circuits of profound reverence. His physical brain knew it could not be the third person of all source that was talking to him. His spirit felt like deity embraced him. Alfred's mind did not want to leave this reverie. The present spirit's Holy Spirit reverberated and reverberated. At some moment, Alfred's mind wanted to know more, so he asked, "And who am I?" The Holy Spirit responded with thought waves that continued to embrace Alfred. Quote, "Thou art Peter, and upon this rock I shall found my church," responded the presence in clear thought communication. "Me, the rock on which the Holy Spirit will found its church?" Alfred was simultaneously awed and shocked. This answering phrase of the Holy Spirit entity was to become the dominant shift of Alfred's life. The literature on interdimensional and extraterrestrial contactees tells us that contactees are often given messianic messages which set them off on lifelong missions as appointed messengers to humankind. Alfred's own immediate reactions were probably not too different from other alien experiencers. His first reaction was profound validation. quote, "Hey, the Holy Spirit knows what it's doing." His second reaction was, "Hey, this entity is playing head games with my ex-Catholic case." His third reaction was, "Hey, this is happening to me now, and I really don't know what it all means." Alfred sat back in thought silence with the entity, feeling at least at once baffled, embraced, responsible, awed, and confused. Alfred was not sure how long he stayed in the state of quiet reverie. It could have been an hour. It could have been less. He remembers thinking that his visitation with the Holy Spirit was at an end. Then came the second act.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Wow, that's wonderful. Can we look at that a moment before we go to the second act?
I'm sorry?
Can we look at that a moment before we go to Act 2?
No, this is not Act 2. That I was just saying. It just says then came the second act. We're still in Act 1.
Okay, you're still in Act 1. Okay, so
yeah,
you thought that was over, but there was another part to this visitation.
Oh yeah. We're going to spend a bit of time more still in Act 1.
Wow,
Okay.
I'll take one of those.
So
Yeah.
yeah. So this is how the book starts, and it's who knows where all of this is going to go over the next 10 years.
Well, I had a couple of questions on that. Because I had, and I told you this in an interview with you, that I have like a messianic type message. It was the same incident from I was seeing the 24 different multiverses. And it says that you have come here to do something that will benefit all of humankind, which sounds very biblical. And, but at 4 years old, I hadn't been to church or Sunday school yet, so I don't know where I got that. That is interesting. Are we overlaying our own religious inputs, inputs that we have from our lives onto these extraterrestrial visitations, or are these truly entities that are, from this realm of biblical proportions? And what have you, I'm sure you reflected on this, and I'd like Sasha's thoughts as well. What do you think that was?
Yeah. These are questions. Those are the fundamental questions that I really ask throughout the book, and that I've asked throughout my life since that February 1973 moment. And how does the universe, or how do certain parties in the universe get a guy who they want and very easily motivate that person to work 24/7 towards certain goals for the rest of his life for nothing? And that's what seems to have happened here.
I can say that for me, it's somewhat of a spurious dichotomy, whether it's internal or extraterrestrial, because I got my transmission. My father read me a poem called Abu Ben Adam, who the angel of the Lord came to Abu Ben Adam in this poem and said, "Here's a list of people that love God." And Abu said, "Hey, am I on it?" And yeah, your name ain't on it. Well, he says, "Put me on the list of the people that love my fellow man." And so the next day, the angel of the Lord came back, and Abu Ben Adam's name was first on the name in the list of those who love God. And my father told me this with such passion that night I had a dream of the Israelis and Egyptians dancing their folk dances on a great pit that they had covered over with all their weapons of mass destruction. And I got mine right there to my father. So we get it different ways,
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So this is yeah, and so I speculate throughout the book, who is the Holy Spirit entity? Is it quote the Holy Spirit? Is it some interdimensional being? And then you can try and figure out, well, who is that interdimensional being? What's the exopolitics of it? Is it a soul? Is it one of your guides or a soul from the spiritual dimensions rather than from a different part of the universe or the multiverse? Or is that a voice to skull? Some part of the Illuminati who are doing it. It really didn't feel like it because there was spirit involved. But you've got to look at that part of the possibilities. But it really and there's so then as we begin to go further, there's like you asked a very intricate question because you're asking who, right? And it's like, it's like, see, I wrote this as a screenplay because I'll just put it out there. I wouldn't mind this being a movie, right?
Right.
Just so long as it's not a messed up movie where they make it into a Hollywood formula movie. But
that's a given. That's what they do to all movies.
yeah. Well, then we'll make it an indie movie, and hopefully that won't happen to it. But the thing is that there's so much intricacy to it because then we go on in Act 1, and then what the Holy Spirit does, and then what happens to me in the rest of Act 1 is totally relevant to what's happening to me today on Sunday, June 28th, 2015. You follow what I'm saying? Because it predicts.
Right.
It predicts what kind of stuff is going to be happening today, and then it goes on to Act 2, and in Act 2 we begin to show you the whole context because the Holy Spirit doesn't appear to me in February 1973 out of nowhere, right? Act 2 actually is a flashback that brings us back to 1971, where I'm in this nondescript office building somewhere in New Jersey or Delaware near Washington with a room full of 50 Department of Defense and DARPA officials who have time traveled my book, Exopolitics, back to 1971, which Andy Bashago has witnessed, testified, and they're looking me over and they're doing time travel surveillance of me because they've time traveled my book back then. And so so that happens to me in 1971, and then in 1973 the Holy Spirit appears to me and says, "Hey guy, guess what? You're Peter, and upon this rock I'm going to found my church." That's how heavy duty. That's a deep duty you're in. That's a deep duty you're in. You follow me? So this is like, from a certain point of view, it's like a multidimensional thriller. If you follow me, and it's kind of written that way, and it's also a beautiful spiritual sort of, and it follows the life of this guy, like Candide, who tumbles from adventure to adventure and manages to survive. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so I'm just giving sort of a flavor of it. But I felt that I had to bring it out in 2015 because things were getting too heated up, too close to World War III wannabe, too close to global depopulation wannabe, too close to, well, let's send all the Americans to the guillotines under Walmart, all of those kind of horrible pictures. And,
oh no, a guillotine under Walmart. Oh gosh.
Those kind of horrible pictures.
Imagery.
Yeah. So I said, wait a minute, this is getting too negative out
Light
here.
up with the guillotine.
I've got to make a planetary appearance on behalf of the Holy Spirit, because that's what this guy said I was supposed to do. So this is my planetary appearance on behalf of the Holy Spirit entity. I don't know. I mean, I still, this thing has happened to me so quickly since it was really, Jade Helm that kind of mustered me up and made me come out in service, that I really, don't have that many talking points about the book. It's like, here it is. And they kind of made me come out in public. So here I am.
Way to go, Danielle. I think that's what they published.
But you will find every kind of encounter here, from the rich, the famous, the powerful, the holy, the beautiful, the meek. It's like all sorts of encounters, everything, the intervention of the divine, the sublime, the ridiculous, everything. Anyway, that is sort of what it is. So you can pepper me with your questions.
Okay, we have 3 minutes before the top of the hour, and we on our break. So
I'm sorry.
We have like 3 minutes before our break. So a quick question is, what is Jade Helm for our listeners who may not know what it is, and its potential, and why it's so dire and horrendous?
Right. Well, as it turns out, I was just listening to one of the myriad programs on Jade Helm right before coming onto the program. And Jade Helm, formally speaking, Jade Helm itself is the name of an artificial intelligence program of the U.S. military for developing sort of organizational plateaus for human populations and for extracting insurgents out of human populations and for fighting wars and battles where your commanding general is an artificial intelligence and not a general. And that's about it. And what they're doing now is they're testing it out on the U.S. population, and that's why the gay flag went up and the Confederate flag went down within the space of 2 weeks, and why they took $200 million in cash, bribed the U.S. Congress, and passed a secret global trade pact, which is the economic backbone of the New World Order, known as the Trans-Pacific Pact. So all of that is being done by artificial AI intelligence now. And as I understand it, formally starting in July 15th, although it's probably starting much more secretly now, they'll be having war games, and what their secret targets are. There's a lot of projection, but it's basically in 7 southern states, including California, and you can go online and see all sorts of essentially negative projections.
All right, we're going to pause at that point. Thank you for listening. We'll be back in 5.
Listen to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. We'll be right back after this message.
Oscar's freeze. That's your cerebral cortex looking for an answer it doesn't have.
See? Even your brain knows you're screwed.
The body's filled with adrenaline right now, whether you know it or not. Your heart's beating fast. It's getting a little harder to breathe. The neurobiological system is telling it to run, but your knees are too weak to move.
Fear is not real. The only place that fear can exist is in our thoughts of the future. It is a product of our imagination, causing us to fear things that do not at present and may not ever exist. That is near insanity. Do not misunderstand me. Danger is very real, but fear is a choice. We are all telling ourselves a story.
You're listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. 100% listener-supported radio. Reporting to danger. Unafraid. Right here, where information never sleeps. Revolution Radio!
Tune in Tuesdays at 12 noon Eastern on Studio A to hear Tammy Adams share her knowledge of an unknown realm on Talking with Your Angels. Join Tammy as she uncovers hidden secrets about the spiritual world of angels, ghosts, and other entities that have been with us longer than we know. Tammy is a psychic, a teacher, spiritual coach, a leader in her field, and will be sharing her information and stories with you. So join us on Tuesdays at noon on Studio A. With Tammy's guidance, you'll find out who has been watching over you from the other side, and soon you will be talking with your angels.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Aloha, everyone, and welcome back to the Sacred Matrix on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com with your hosts, Janet Lesson and Dr. Sasha Lesson, and our special guest is Alfred Lambremont Webre. But before we get back to our show, I want to remind everybody that Revolution Radio is listener-supported, so please do go over to that donation button on freedomslips.com and make your donation, whatever you can afford to give or would like to spare at this time, $1, $5, $15, $20, $30, $100, whatever will work for you, please make your donation by pressing that donation button. Your donations are greatly appreciated and may allow Revolution Radio to bring you shows like ours and many other shows on Studio A and B. And thank you very much for your donation. Before we get back to the show, we ended with Jade Helm, and the next thing I want to do is the 10 plus points. But Dr. Lesson, what would you like to say before we do that?
Oh, I'd like to clue people in that, that basically, if you're just tuning in now, especially, Alfred Webre has got some incredibly great stuff on how we can save ourselves from being beheaded in the parking lot of Walmart by the Jade Helmsers. Especially, he's got 10 points that are going to help us toward a positive future, and I'm looking forward to hearing them.
Yeah, they have a real motivation to get past that negative timeline. So, Alfred, back to you.
Yeah, and so, I'm not quite sure what people would like to hear. We could go through the various narratives of the book. We could go concentrate on Act 3, which is where we pick up in from the year 2000 forward. We end up in that with the 10 points. We end up with a positive future equation.
That sounds like the one. That's the one to go for. Yes, Act 3.
Oh, okay, good. So now, what it is that here I'm just looking at my Kindle edition here. By the way, the Kindle edition just came out Friday, and you can just go to Amazon.com and Google my name, search there on Amazon for my name, or just, the name of the book, Landing Heaven on Earth. And it's only $4.95 it's, the softcover edition is 742 pages. So it's a very lengthy book. It's very substantial. And so what I say is that buying this book is like a crowdfunding, because what you're doing is that you're contributing to a collective crowdfunding of Landing Heaven on Earth. Because what we're going to do is collect all of the funds from this book to land heaven on earth. So imagine if 3 million people, but let's say 100 million. Hello?
Yeah,
hello?
Yeah,
there are kind of strange sounds going on. There are 100 million people in the U.S. Well, if you start getting a substantial number of people buying books, it becomes like a crowdfunding, and then you can really start investing funds in actually changing things. And so that's what I've vowed to do, is that any monies that come in from these books is to invest them into actually changing things. So I just wanted to add that little public service announcement.
Cool.
Great.
Let me get that. I'm sort of I've got all sorts of goodies here, like my White House my affidavit for the Carter White House extraterrestrial communication study, for the 1977 Carter White House study, where Jimmy Carter is an extraterrestrial abductee who was actually abducted by the ETs before being put in office as a president.
So you're saying Jimmy Carter was an abductee? What's the
it's like you all kind of want to go to the end of the book, but you're skipping all this good stuff. But if that's what you want to do,
okay.
No, it's that part of the adventures that we follow in, say, Act 1 is all the good stuff that we did in Washington, getting the House Select Committee on Assassinations off the ground. This is for the investigation of the assassinations of John F. Kennedy, Martin Luther King, Robert F. Kennedy, and Malcolm X, and also the 1977 post-Jimmy Carter White House extraterrestrial communication study, which is what I was involved in Washington in Act 1 in the 1970s. And those are extraordinary events that have not happened in American history since then. And it gives you all of the inside story there. And so I'm not sure how much you want to go into that.
Whatever you want to share. We're sitting here on the edge of our chair.
Oh.
Inquiring minds want to know as much as you're willing to reveal.
Right.
Okay.
You can hold some back, or you can keep it. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, here is why don't I just, so this is for the record. So, and I'm just kind of paging through on my way back. So why don't I just read some of the read from the affidavit that was sworn August 30th, 2000, and that was filed with the Disclosure Project. This is my.
Go for it.
Is that good?
Perfect.
Okay. I, Alfred Lambremont Webre, do affirm and swear the following to be true and factual. My name is Alfred Lambremont Webre. I was born May 24th, 1942 at the U.S. Naval Air Base, Pensacola, Florida. Blah, blah, blah. Bachelor of Science, Yale University, year's doctorate degree. Yale Law School, Master of Education in Counseling, University of Texas, member of the Bar District of Columbia. 1977 Carter White House Extraterrestrial Communication Study. A senior policy analyst at the Center for the Study of Social Policy at Stanford Research Institute, now SIU International, Menlo Park, California. I was principal investigator for a proposed civilian scientific study of extraterrestrial communication. This study presented to and approved by appropriate White House staff of President Jimmy Carter during the period May 1977 until its unlawful termination of contract research on or about September 1977. At the time of such unlawful termination, the proposal for the 1977 Carter White House extraterrestrial communication study had been approved for implementation by the management of Stanford Research Institution by appropriate White House domestic policy staff. Okay, some of the background here in the text, and I just don't want to go in and read too much. We show the evidence why Jimmy Carter, apart from being having filed his own UFO sighting report, which he did in 1973 about a UFO sighting that he had in 1969. in the company of the Leary, Georgia Lions Club. Jimmy Carter was probably also abducted onto a UFO craft, an extraterrestrial craft, and was an extraterrestrial abductee, probably where he was debriefed a lot about his future U.S. presidency and probably about all this stuff that we would be doing with him around the White House ET study. You follow what I'm saying?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so
you're saying that he was probably abducted, and what was his sighting again? What year?
His sighting was in 1969. And
looking at that, you think that was an abduction experience, not just a sighting.
Yeah. And this accounts for why he is totally different from all of the other presidents and why he was targeted by the Bush gang, the Bush Rockefeller gang, where they conspired with the Iranians during the hostage crisis to hold back the hostages so that Reagan would win, so that they would have a Cold Warrior in the White House and they could continue their policy of war, disease, crime, and poverty, whereas Carter was a genuine...
Alfred, did they mess up the helicopters that went to rescue the hostages too, with Bush guys behind that?
Yes. In fact, our most recent interview with Lorraine Murray and her partner, Laurence Battis. Laurence was part of the Iranian hostage rescue operation, and he testified directly and in detail how the helicopters were messed up on purpose. Yeah.
On purpose. Sabotage.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So to continue with this affidavit. See, a lot of this is stuff that has not been seen in public before, in a wider public. And so it just cements all of this. It's like this really, gives substance. Okay, you want to know what's really going on in history? Well, this is what's really going on in history. Okay.
You're on Forrest Gump.
Yeah, exactly. On information and belief, the persons together with their then positions, that brings up another interesting issue. And that is that Act 3, Scene 1 is called the Air War. And we'll get into that, okay? That you're mentioning Forrest Gump. See, I don't want to jump to the end too quick because you're going to miss all the flowers along the way. Okay.
I was just making a joke. I said, don't jump to the end. We still have 45 minutes of the show.
Yeah. On information and belief, the persons, together with their then positions, having direct personal knowledge of the 1977 Carter White House extraterrestrial communication, include at least the following: Jacques Vallée, Institute for the Future, Palo Alto, California, position and study scientific investigator. Peter Sturrock, Chairman, Department of Physics, Stanford University. These were their positions back then. Position and study scientific advisor. Tom Thomas, Supervisor, Center for the Study of Social Policy, Stanford Research Institute, position and study land supervisor. Peter Schwartz, Senior Policy Analyst, Center for the Study of Social Policy, Research Position Policy Advisor. Present position, Chairman, Global Business Network. Willis Harmon, Senior Policy Analyst, Center for the Study of Social Policy, Stanford Research Institute. And then, it just goes and goes along this. Description, unlawful termination of the 1977 Carter White House extraterrestrial communication study. During the period May 1977 until the unlawful termination of the study in September 1977, I met at the Executive Office Building, White House, approximately every 20 days with appropriate White House staff to review and secure contract research approval of the 1977 Carter White House extraterrestrial communication study. On information and belief, my signature is recorded with the security gate of the Executive Office Building for each such visit. The only other occasion I have accessed the Executive Office Building and signed in at the security gate was in 1988 when handling a legal matter on behalf of a client who had brought legal action for acts of President George H.W. Bush Sr. During the period May to September 1977, I presented verbal briefings, a written outline, and a written proposal for the 1977 White House extraterrestrial communication study to the appropriate White House staff members. The purpose of such presentation and proposal was to secure sole source contract research approval from the White House, as well as to facilitate contract relations with the study's proposed contracting agencies, NASA and the National Science Foundation. Such presentations, including the proposed study, etc. An outline, anyway, the proposal was prepared with the direct personal assistance of Jacques Vallée and Peter Stark, those both then expert scientists in the field. Jacques Vallée personally handed a version of the preliminary proposal to me on the morning of my airborne flight from Palo Alto, California to Washington, D.C. in or about September 1977 to meet White House staff on contract research approval of the proposal. At a meeting in or about September 1977, a staff member of the White House domestic policy staff approved in principle the 1977 Carter White House extraterrestrial communication study as a sole source contract research project. She also approved my representing to officials of the study's cooperating agents that the White House had approved the study for application. And then following the September meeting in which the White House domestic policy staff approved the 1977 Carter White House extraterrestrial communication communication study, I returned to SRI headquarters in Palo Alto, California, and was directed to attend a meeting with an African-American senior administrative officer at SRI. Also present was Peter Schwartz, SRI policy advisor, and the senior administrative officer stated to me that in a few minutes, the SRI Pentagon liaison would be joining the meeting. And he had stated that SRI's research contracts with the Pentagon would be jeopardized if SRI went forward with the 1977 Carter White House extraterrestrial communication study. And he stated that the study was hereby being terminated and advised me in his words to dissimulate any negative reaction I might have.
Whoa.
Yeah.
What was the mandate? What were they saying that they were going to do with this White House extraterrestrial communication study? Were they acknowledging extraterrestrials in order to have this study?
Yeah. Let me go in. This is the overall purpose of the 1977 Carter White House extraterrestrial communication study was to create, design, and carry out an independent civilian-led research compilation evaluation of phenomena suggesting an extraterrestrial interdimensional presence on Earth. The outcome of the study was to have been a public report by the White House detailing the compiled evidence and evaluation, together with possible scientific models for the implications of the research. The White House report was to have contained public policy recommendations emerging from the evaluations and conclusions of the study. These, if warranted, including transformation of secrecy regulations of U.S. military intelligence agencies. It is clear from the evidence that the phenomena are studied worldwide and in the public domain. The scientific and public policy goal of the 1977 Carter White House ET communication study was to fill a substantial gap in civilian scientific knowledge of the UFO, extraterrestrial, and related phenomena. The knowledge gap was created and maintained by excessive secrecy practices and regulations of U.S. Department of Defense agencies. Historically, the agencies proposed for the study were the White House, NASA, National Science Foundation, SRI, and scientific experts. And it should be noticed that the structure and contributors are similar and parallel to the Cometa report issued by a high-level private committee in France after a 3-year study. The committee included the former head of the French equivalent of NASA. The Cometa report endorses the extraterrestrial hypothesis of the most plausible interpretation of the data. The 1977 Carter White House extraterrestrial communication study antedated the Cometa report by approximately 20 years. The 1977 Carter White House extraterrestrial communication study was designed and structured around several research phases and tasks: compilation of UFO, EB, and related databases, evaluation, reported recommendation, global and regional data banks, public international funding, rescission of military intelligence secrecy regulations, design and implementation of a public extraterrestrial communication program for intentional terrestrial, non-hostile communication with such extraterrestrial intelligence as might be posited, design and implementation of an international public order system to facilitate integration of Earth into a universe governmental order. Now, all of this was in 1977 when the Pentagon was under secret treaty with the reptilians.
Oh, okay. So the
this is
Pentagon's doing this treaty.
So this
Carter
is
doesn't know what's going on because he's not in that loop, correct? And so, and then his Project Blue Book was closed, correct? Well, a few years before that, I've lost that. So go ahead, back to the reptilians. Talk about that.
Yeah. So this project would have uncovered and made public all of the secret treaties that the U.S. government, the military, was involved in with the ETs and made them public. And it would have recommended that we let go of those treaties, that we instead make treaties with the peaceful ETs, and that we implement an international public order system to facilitate integration of Earth into a universe governmental order. So no wonder they shut it down.
Of course.
This was in 1977. I mean, what was I thinking, right? This is like fools rush in where angels fear to tread. This is the result of the Holy Spirit. I mean, what are these guys thinking?
That Carter was so different. You could just really feel how different he was. He was responsible for rescuing some of the hostages from Dulce. In his old age, he's building houses for poor people. There's something definitely more loving about Jimmy Carter than the other presidents we've had, lots of them.
But the world was different back then. We were coming out of the whole hippie generation, and we were still somewhat optimistic about the future we were co-creating. The baby boomers had incarnated in mass, and we were, even though we lost everybody, Kennedy, Lenin, and King, we were still, even though all that happened, we were hopeful. It was the 80s that brought us into this yuppie period and started pulling us down into materialism. where the attitudes started to change.
Right. And that was the direct effect of the sabotage of George H.W. Bush, who went in and made the deal with the Iranians, who are among the hidden controllers of the planet, to bring down Carter. And I had linked up with Carter because he was a fellow ET contactee with this proposal. I'd gotten White House approval, but then the Pentagon liaison went out to SRI and said, if you go forward this, we are going to terminate all studies, missile studies monies, which are 25% of SRI's budget. So then they forced SRI to terminate this study. You follow what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah. And so that, and then when I was at the inner ring of the Pentagon, they hit me with electromagnetic weapons, with remote neural weapons. And that's when I got hit with remote neural weapons as a targeted individual, which had severe effects on my health.
So tell us about the hit and how did you know you were hit? What was that like?
It was like getting stunned. This was in October 1977, and I had planned a trip that went from Palo Alto to Washington, where I went to the White House, talked about about this project, met with the Assistant Secretary of Defense at the inner ring of the Pentagon, where they started hitting me with electromagnetic weapons. Then at that time, the King Tut, remember the King Tut exhibits were touring? Well, the King Tut exhibits was down in New Orleans. And one of my brothers was studying architecture at Tulane. So I thought that I would catch a flight from Washington, D.C. down to New Orleans on the way back to Palo Alto and go and see him, and at the same time see the King Tut exhibit. Mm-hmm. And so and at the same time, the district attorney of at the same time as this in Washington, we had the House Select Committee on Assassinations going, which I had been able to get started because, and this is in Act 1 also, where Henry B. Gonzalez, who was chairman of the House Banking Committee with the Black Caucus, was able to get the House Select Committee on Assassination started, and he had called me down to Washington to help coordinate some of the public support for that, which I did. And so then the district attorney of New Orleans at that time, Jim, I'm just blocking on his name, Jim Garrow or something. Jim Garrison was the district attorney. So I thought I would fly down from Washington and meet with Jim Garrison at the same time, because I was on the board of directors of the Assassination Information Bureau, which was the public watchdog that we had become part of, advising the House Select Committee on Assassinations of its investigation of the Kennedy assassination. So things were like pretty intense. And they hit me with remote neural weapons in New Orleans as well. And
could you see the weapon? Could you see the person that was zapping you? Or
no,
how did that work?
No, because these are, you see, all they have to do is tune into your DNA. This is a non-local weapon. these weapons operate in subspace, and
is this propelled by people directing their minds at you, or is it a machine?
These are weapons that they're remote influencing, and they can direct harmful frequencies at you that can induce a biowarfare effect. They can create cancer in you if they want to. They can create some other kind of disease. They can make you drive your car directly into an oncoming 18-wheeler. You know?
Wow, so it's a beam weapon that's targeted at specific individuals. Wow.
Yeah. And so I was being zapped with electromagnetic weapons because I was director of the Carter White House extraterrestrial communication study. You follow me? Which had gotten White House approval.
How did it manifest in your body? How did it manifest in you physically?
The outward signs are that you're having a psychosis.
Whoa.
So yours manifested as psychosis rather than cancer or heart attack or anything.
Yeah. And whereas in fact, what you're having is PTSD, post-traumatic stress. And this is one of the reasons why I went and got an advanced degree as a counseling psychotherapist, so that I would be able to say, I'm not crazy. These were weapons. Yeah. Because after this, I had to reconstruct my whole life, because I had been targeted with these electromagnetic weapons that left me with a psychiatric diagnosis. I had to like reconstruct my life. I was a targeted individual. And so I spent, and that's part of the reason why I do so many media programs with TIs, with people who are targeted individuals by the transhumanist agenda, because I understand how the matrix powers are using these weapons now to take over governments and institutions and destroy good people. So this is all part of the drama that is happening during this time, i.e., like any other pioneer or any other activist in any other area, I'm running into these things. But of course, I'm doing it on behalf because, hey, the Holy Spirit told me to do it, right?
Right.
So,
wow.
Yeah. So, it's not that the Holy Spirit told me to do it, and that is, I am undertaking all of this, but it's with a heightened consciousness that came about because of my multidimensional experiences, and then my taking on. Yeah.
You're not being driven by authority. You're in touch and in the flow.
Yeah. But it's not that, the Red Sea parts and I walk through it. It's been 40 years of encountering obstacle after obstacle after obstacle. And so part of the action of Act 1, Act 2, Act 3 is going through all of this and explaining all of this. And it turns out that a lot of what you read as news, you're actually seeing some of the effects of activities that I've been involved in.
So I have a question. You had your original activation in 1977. This is just a hypothesis of mine, and I've not really shared it, but it seems that there are several factions vying for this reality. The light and dark, isomotive, anti and analytical, and the anti-darks and the analytes, similar differently. There could be positive activations in one faction, and then the negative activation or the attack, the one that causes psychosis, be the other faction, all vying for Alfred Lambremont Webre.
Well, that's exactly what A.R. Borden says, is that the Mardukians who returned are warring with the Analytes, who are now ruled by Nanar, who's become king of Nibiru, and they infiltrate each other's organizations and assassinate each other, and they do these weapons on the assets, witting and unwitting, of the other side. It's going on, and there's more than one side. That's what I get.
Right. In 73 was your first activation. In 77, which is about the time that the A.R. Borden expansion is reporting that Marduk returns to try to take back the government of the planet. Anyway.
Yeah. I missed I missed some of that. Could you summarize it?
Go ahead, sweetheart.
It's what happened is Anu. It was and Marduk basically looked like he was going to take over the whole planet. This is a report from Borden, so Anu created the succession crisis to bring all his chiefs home and to really stop Marduk and unify them. He ordered all to come home and swear a loyalty oath to him and to the kingdom. And Marduk refused, so he was sent back to Earth. In the meantime, Anu was able to. He wanted Ningishita to be the new king. That was his idea, because Ningishita had ties to both clans. But Ningishita said, "No way, choose Nanar. He's the one that's been running things for you as Yahweh and Allah down on Earth. Let Nanar be the king, so that you have now on Earth the forces of Nanar, the old kingdom, with its new king of Nibiru, and the Mardukans, who are saying, we are going to take over, and Marduk says, should be king of Nibiru also." And so they've been assassinating, Borden writes, each other's people that are on one side or the other side, and it's, the clandestine government, even the ones that are sympathetic, are just trying not to get clobbered in the middle of this battle of these two powerful hierarchies.
Right. And how do you relate that to what I was saying? I mean,
well, what it seems like, Carter was one faction and Bush was another.
I see.
Activated by somebody in 73, which put you on the path of love and light.
Yeah.
And in 77, somebody else came in and was zapping you.
That's an asset of the other side. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I was getting from that.
Yeah. Now it seems that we haven't had anybody since Carter that is a light asset. Is that correct?
Well, we had Reagan, who was in the meeting with Gorbachev and both their wives, and they were briefed on the extraterrestrial presence in Russia. Then Reagan started saying, "What if?" Because he was briefed that the Anunnaki were incoming and that this further division was about to unfold. And so he got zapped with Alzheimer's.
Yeah, they said that basically the Star Wars was not aimed at preventing anything from Russia. It was aimed just over the horizon, expecting Marduk's fleet to come in. And so this was Nanar, who had already established connection and was the Star Wars initiative, at least according to A.R. Borden in the link. It was all about being able to stop Marduk's forces from taking over.
Right, but Reagan was put in power by Bush's forces, or no?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But they wanted to shut him up. He started talking about the extraterrestrial presence like 3 or 4 times, and finally they shut him up by accelerating or giving him Alzheimer's.
Right.
He kept talking about it.
Exactly. So, but all of the time travel predicted presidents, that is Bush Sr., Bush Jr., Clinton, and Obama, are pretty much of the darkness, correct?
Yeah, Obama's a CIA agent, and Chicago identified him in the program and everything.
Yeah, so so that now we're and I was just given a report today by a Russian. I have to evaluate it, that Putin is actually dead, and that the current person that we think is Putin is not the real Putin.
Wow.
Yeah.
So who's taking over from Putin?
Sorry?
Did you say someone taking over from Putin? I missed what you said.
That I have not had a chance to check it out, although I've read it back and forth, and I don't have an opinion on it. But that there's some thoughts that the person in Russia who they say is Putin is not the real Putin, that the real Putin has been killed, and that it's the dark force has taken over in Russia.
Well, that makes sense that they can very easily replace the person that's in charge with a clone of themselves, and nobody knows the difference. So even if we had an Obama at one point that was a good person, that was on the side of light and goodness, he's probably been replaced with one of the clones of the dark forces by this time.
Yeah.
So there's no reaching the soul that's animating the form of the whatever president is. However, I guess Carter had to cut a deal to live out the rest of his life. So he escaped, assassination or.
Well, these things could just be split sub-personalities. They don't really have to even be external physical aspects of the same person. It can just be different parts of the personality are suppressed and others are brought out, as like in Stewart's case, where they deliberately split people like this, and a whole bunch of compartmentalizing sub-personalities. So you really could have a different Carter at different times by different compartmentalized Carters.
Right, it could be the same form, but they brought, like a Manchurian candidate, they brought forth a different personality to take charge of the Carter form or the Obama form or whoever's in. They're all robots. I mean, they're all puppets. Apparently.
Right. Now I can see that we have about 15 minutes left, and so there's a whole, so we're still talking about stuff that's way back in Act 1, and then there's a whole, there's the rest of Act 1, there's Act 2, and then there's Act 3, and there's all kinds of stuff that I think it's important. Let me just cover a couple of really quick things I think that are important, concepts to just bring forth. And I think that there are a couple of concepts to bring forth that are really important. And then, at least for this touching, one is the air war. And because I really haven't begun to introduce myself to the public at all. And I don't think that the public really understands who I am in the way that is who my persona is. And I don't know who my persona is. But at least on Act 3, Scene 1, I begin to introduce the air war. And by the air war, and I'm just going to read this, by Christmas 2014 in Vancouver, BC, was Jerry, his soul spouse, Alfred, had become accustomed to the air war as one more feature of his incarnation. By the air war, Alfred referred to the creation of mass negative memes, negative propaganda thought forms, directed specifically against, quote, Alfred and his archetype, that the powers behind the false matrix broadcast through motion pictures, television, advertising, popular music, and internet that have the effect of inoculating specific human population against Alfred emergence in any position of credibility or leadership. Okay?
Right on.
Okay, so I'll just kind of enter into this really gently, okay? But we can go, like, I'm going to write a whole book on the air war that goes back through my whole life so that people can kind of reframe it, because the air war was led by the other side, by the Rothschilds, by the Rockefellers, so that I've gone through my whole life as an unknown, because it kind of neutralized me, you know, in my mission to the planet. And that's why the planet impartially is in its current state. Okay. For example, this is the air war in The Hobbit. Alfred, the invented Hobbit character who never was, going out for a Christmas 2014 Hobbit movie outing with his family in Vancouver, BC, turned into a typical air war encounter and Illuminati hit for Alfred, as well as a strategic realization of the depth and threat perception with which the false matrix controllers viewed Alfred. Editor's note: come, O reader, with an open mind, for these insights are for those with eyes to see and ears to hear and souls to embrace and comprehend. In summary, The Hobbit, The Battle of Five Armies, is a 2014 epic fantasy adventure film directed by Peter Jackson and written by Jackson, Fran Walsh, Philippa Boyens, and Guillermo del Toro. It is the third and final installment in the three-part film adaptation based on the novel by J.R.R. Tolkien. And, you know, it goes on talking about the film. If one searches the cast of the movie, you will find actor Ryan Gage played the character Alfred, pronounced Alfred in the actual film. Ryan Gage is an English actor who has most recently appeared in The Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug, and The Hobbit, The Battle of the Five Armies as Alfred, and The Musketeers as King Louis XIII. And this is the list of original characters found in Peter Jackson's film. Enter Alfred. Now, let's look at the moral character and role model of Alfred in the largest grossing The Hobbit movie ever. The name Alfred is stated over and over and over in this film. If you do not get this, O gentle reader, you will never get this example of the air war. Okay, and this is a quote. Alfred, portrayed by Ryan Gage, is a cowardly and greedy man who is a government official of the town of Esgaroth and the master of Lake Town's conniving servant. Ultimately, Alfred is betrayed by the master and forced to fend for himself during Smaug's attack on Lake Town. After almost getting lynched by the angry survivors, Alfred ends up working under Bard before fleeing from Dale with some looted gold during the Battle of the Five Armies. As I type, then this is me talking again. As I type these words now, I am filled with rage that my name and persona would be so sullied before billions of subconscious minds throughout our fair planet, indeed the noosphere, the currency the black magicians of Hollywood deal in, all because various layers of self-appointed networks and bloodlines, what a hard light terminology, want to stay in some power or create some loose energy to feed some dimensional or other energy beingness. That's crazy and loopy and self-destructive to the biosphere. The irony, of course, is that the original book, The Hobbit, by J.R.R. Tolkien, does not even have a character in it named Alfred.
Wow.
You can search the book online. Just search The Hobbit, free download, or PDF online and search Alfred, or read the whole book online for free. The character Alfred was invented whole cloth for purposes of the air war against Alfred. In compliance with the CIA or Mossad or New World Order or fuckwad network in Peter Jackson's shop in New Zealand. Or, hey, wait, it's the standard contract clause in Hollywood. Do you have the Alfred Hick clause in this picture? Oh, no, it's not in the fine print. It's off contract. You know, in the wink and the handshake. Well, let's take a look at some television. And then I go to analyze the air war in one of the Jon Stewart show on the Daily Show. And then I go to some other hits in the air war. Okay. So now I've talked about the air war for the first time in public in 73 years where I've been living it in my whole life. Okay. So there you go. Does that make any sense to you?
Oh, it does. It's like, you know, I told a joke and the whole world started laughing. It's so obvious that it's not accidental, and that they're twitting at you and they're afraid of you because you're a meme changer.
You know, thank you so much, because I every time that I've opened my mouth over the years to say, they're talking about me, I've been like, you know, I just stopped even saying that because people would think that I was utterly crazy, you know? But
it's so beyond the random probability that it couldn't be random. It has to be part of some conscious choices. You know, you're being targeted.
Yeah.
It also empowers you. Once you reach that level, then you can move out of victim to empowerment.
Oh yeah.
When you have that realization.
In fact, I mentioned that the second volume in this book is called Recovery, right?
Mm-hmm.
One time, George W. Bush was referring to recovery in the State of the Union message. When he was president, Bush was doing psyops on me in the State of the Union message. You see, that's what a standard schizophrenic thought, correct?
Yeah, I guess it's got a pathological label, though. I wouldn't put a pathological label on things people call schizophrenic.
Yeah. But that's i.e., people say that's a crazy thought, right?
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah. That's what they would be afraid of it.
I'm the judge that found him to be a war criminal. That's why he was doing it.
It's not linear, and they're access the entire continuum, so they know who you are.
Yeah.
Just time travel is what they're doing all the time. They have a total.
Yeah. So
So do we, though. See, when you get to this point, this quantum access level that you're accomplishing, you're at the point that you are no longer a victim. You're aware of the total game, and you're part of it and what's happening all around you.
Yeah.
So it sounds crazy, but you have to go through that point where you're saying, I'm crazy, because that's the part that stops you in your tracks.
But they're providing you with the very evidence that you need to show that you're not off, that you're right on. You know, there it is. By the way they try to get you, they're exposing how important you are.
Yeah, and this is why I feel so privileged to be with you, because I think it takes persons it takes media hosts like yourselves who have been through these experiences and who understand this to be able to understand a person like myself, an author who comes and says, look, I've been involved in a part of the process here on Earth where I had the President of the United States gang stalking me publicly on world television during his State of the Union speech. And I have Peter Jackson, and those New World Order controlled studios using the Hobbit movies to do negative noosphere programming on me, against me. And I'm telling you, and this is part of what's going on. And I know that we've only got less than a minute, but if you want to read this further, go to exopolitics.com. And if you really want to find out what's going on this planet, what the Bushes are up to, what the Rockefellers are up to, what the Obamas are up to, and if you want to find out how to get out of it, you've got to get this book, and you've got to find out what the real game is, because this game has not been reported on before. And I guess that's what I'm saying.
Right. Because you have bared your soul and you're vulnerable, yet this is the key. This is the ring. This is the Lord of the Rings. This is the key.
Yeah. You know what my teacher, Carl Rogers, told me? He says, when I think I'm only talking about myself, only about Carl Rogers, saying something idiosyncratic, it's something that everybody can relate to. And because you've attached the spiritual, you're showing us that we too can touch that and feel our divine mission.
Right. And I apologize if I made any F-bombs on the air.
Enjoyed the show.
We enjoyed the show. Courtesy Alfred. Thank you, everybody, for listening today. Much love and blessings from Lone Paw.